This is what's up, man? I told you. Let me check out my on live stream. Yeah, go. I'm going to watch myself. I'm going to watch myself.
I'm on my brother's phone.
Stop hitting me! Bruv! Stop hitting me! Wait. Let me set my pin.
This is me and my friend is Henry.
I will change you. Mama Bing!
Ow! Children.
My fault.
She delivered a baby boy. Doctors told her she was having a girl. The mom thought everyone was joking, and she couldn't quite wrap her head around it until she saw him for herself. After the initial shock wore off, of course, it didn't really matter what sex the baby was. The Australian couple received a lot of pink gifts during her 9 months of pregnancy. And the photographer, Jessica Jackson.
Yes?
I saw like a cat. Then I thought its face and its tail was brown. And I spotted it brown.
Impetuously severe captain Daniel Caruso. Scores a goal. It's quite natural. Well, that was extraordinary.
Welcome back, everyone. Today we are going to take a look at 2020 dark romantic comedy film called Looks That Kill. The scene opens in a therapy center where a doctor claimed man fits across a boy named Max, whose face has been wrapped up with bandages. Klingman asks Max what the problem is. Max tells him that people somehow mysteriously die when they look at his face. He then narrates the details and flashes back to the time of his birth, where a doctor, along with some other staff who were present at the time of his delivery, fainted and died just after looking at his face. After this, Max continues, his family decides to move out of the city, believing in the proposition, less people, less mishaps, but nothing could help him. He tells Klingman that he just wants to be a normal boy and lead a normal life. Klingman says that the problem only seems to be in Max's head and urges him to take off his bandages. We are then taken to the waiting area outside, where Max's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Richardson, are seated. A thug startles them and they rush inside to see the doctor lying dead on the ground in front of Max, who is hastily wrapping his face back up. Following this incident, the police arrive and warn Max's parents that if more people die like this, they would have to put Max in prison. The couple assure the cops that such mishaps will not occur again. Meanwhile, a brick on the ground catches Max's attention and he keeps it with himself. That night, Max's friend Dan joins the family for dinner. After learning that Dan has signed up on a dating site, Max's parents suggest Max do the same so he can make friends with more people his age. While Dan is alone with Max later, Max gives Dan the brick and asks him to hit him in the face with it so his problem can end. Dan refuses to do this and tells him that due to Valentine's Day, Max has great chances of scoring a date, thus he should try. After saying this, Dan gets immersed in his phone. Max tries to get his attention by slapping his phone and accidentally ends up throwing it on the ground. As a response, Dan hits him right on the face with a brick. Next day, Mrs. Richardson takes Max to another therapist. The people in the waiting area are staring at Max because of his wrapped up face. This irks his mother, and she immediately tells Max to hide his face with a magazine. Max goes to the magazine rack but finds it empty. The girl called Alex is seen playing video games there. Alex gives Max her magazine and the two have a brief conversation before Max is called in to the doctor. Later at home, Mrs. Richardson makes a call to complain about the malfunctioning heating system of her living room, but as soon as the person on the other end learns that she is Max's mother, he hangs up. Dan visits Max after this and tells him he's got a date for him. Max seems reluctant to go and falls onto the floor in stress. Dan assures him that everything will be alright and takes him to a restaurant where he introduces him to a girl called Erica. It turns out Erica is repulsed by Max's bandages and has no interest whatsoever in their date. To add insult to injury, the shy Max acts very awkward due to the newness of their experience. A moment later, a hooligan teenager called Craig starts a scene on another table and gets up to leave. While walking by Max and Erica's table, he recognizes Erica as been beside her. He then looks at Max and realizes he's the guy who kills him with looks. This discussion regarding his face makes Max uncomfortable and he accidentally spills his drink. Craig gets enraged and starts wiping the table with Max's face. The manager comes and makes the security guards take care of him. Max asks Erica if she'll go on a date with him some other time, but she refuses and leaves. Unsettled and dejected by this event, Max decides to commit suicide. He goes to a high bridge and stands at the edge, holding himself back by the railing. Just as he's about to jump, Alex, the girl from the hospital, approaches him out of nowhere and asks him what he's up to. Max declares his intention and expresses his emotion. Alex offers Max some jelly beans, and when he refuses them, she dumps them in the water and remarks that he'll at least be jumping in a river full of jelly beans. Max tells her this used to be his dream once. They soon converse for a while, and Max decides he gets jumping. After that, Alex takes Max with her to a retirement home. She introduces him to a couple of elderly women called Esther and Rosemary. They all sit at the table where they share their life experiences and tell the teens how their lives are so much easier than many. Alex then walks Max to his house. Max asks if they can meet the next day, but Alex apologizes to him for giving him the wrong impression and refuses to meet him the next day. Max tells Dan about Alex while he's playing video games with them later. Dan tells him that he should retrace his steps to try to bump into her again. Later, Max sees the words, "You jump, I jump," spoken by Alex on a piece of cloth at home under a drawing of a bridge. The next morning, Max waits for Alex at her bus stop. Alex unfortunately arrives after her bus has already left. The alarmed Max tells her she just missed her bus, but as a response, she only stares at him and asks him if he's stalking her. Having no answer to her question, Max chooses to remain silent. A moment later, he asks Alex to spend a few more hours with him since she already missed her bus.
I can't actually remember this ever now.
Excited Max hurriedly
I call it
They keep not take us on the first floor. On the first floor and on the upstairs first floor.
Max reveals the truth about his face to
And
Alex.
on the
To Max's
upstairs
surprise,
room.
she already knew. Alex also reveals that she has a rare heart condition due to which any kind of emotion, good or bad, affects her negatively. Afterwards, Max and Alex visit the theater and play a drinking game together. There, Alex tells Max that he's her first friend ever. They both enjoy each other's company and then go to Max's place. The two fool around in Max's room, and Alex takes off his glasses to look at his eyes. While she's staring into his aqua eyes, Max's parents come home and get shocked and excited to find Alex there. They tell him from now on, Yushin, an exchange student, will be living with them. Yushin turns out to be rather rude. She immediately goes to her room and slams the door shut. The next morning, Alex and Max visit Rosemary and Esther. Rosemary is sitting on a dinner table, eagerly awaiting someone. Esther tells them she's waiting for her son, who once used to bring her pies on her birthday but doesn't visit anymore. It is revealed that Rosemary's 82nd birthday, and she awaits for her son like next year. Rosemary later joins them and they play games. At dinner, Yushin is constantly on her phone. Mrs. Richardson asks Yushin if she wants to make her something special for her to eat, but she only gets silence as a response. A moment later, the doorbell rings and Yushin rushes to the door. She takes a pizza from the delivery guy outside and runs back inside without a word. Mrs. Richardson apologizes to the delivery guy and pays him. She then tells Max she must take Yushin around the city to show her places the next day. Max protests and says he's supposed to go camping with Dan and Alex, but Mrs. Richardson tells him to take Yushin along with them. The following day, Dan, Max, Alex, and Yushin go out. Yushin leaves the venture on her own. Alex snaps a twig and gets wounded in the process. Max cuts off a piece of the bandages wrapped around his face and bandages her wound. Alex thanks him and turns away. She notices that her electronic heart monitor has sensed emotions, which for her is bad news. At night while camping, Alex tells Max she wishes she could see his face. Max pulls the sheets over them and tells Alex to close her eyes. As she does, he unwraps his face and wraps the bandages around her eyes. He then lets her feel his face with her hands. In the heat of the moment, Alex presses a kiss on Max's lips and immediately gets out and lays down to sleep as her heart can be heard thumping violently against her chest. Later, Dan and Max pull a Christmas tree out of Max's house and lay it outside. Dan gets splinters in his hand, thus he's rushed to the hospital. The two also find Alex there with her mother. Dan stops them and tries to introduce Max and himself, but Alex avoids them and tells her mother that they just work together and don't spend much time together. Later, Alex and Max meet outside by the road. Max asks why she said that to her mother, to which she explains her mother doesn't like the idea of her having friends since feelings are bad for her. The two visit the retirement home after this. Esther greets them, but Rosemary seems to not be around. They ask about Rosemary, saying they brought her pies, but Esther reveals Rosemary's health conditions have worsened. She takes the teens to Rosemary, who is now bedridden in a critical situation. The situation upsets both Max and Alex greatly. Max and Alex share their problems and how people treat them oddly because of their rare conditions. Alex urges Max to show his face to Rosemary so that she may die peacefully. Max argues, saying he does not want to do that, but at the end, he agrees to do this with a heavy heart. Rosemary regains her consciousness when Max touches her hand. Max asks her if she would like to sleep. Rosemary blinks her eyes, indicating an affirmative response. Thus, Max unwraps his face. Rosemary looks at him and dies. Next, we're shown Max sitting with his mother at a table while his father works on a new game he's obsessed with. Yushin enters the house and goes upstairs without a word. Mrs. Richardson tries to ask her how she is, but as a response, Yushin only rudely kicks her bag down the stairs. Mrs. Richardson asks Max how things are with him and Alex. He tells her that Alex has stopped responding to his text messages, thus he is confused. Mrs. Richardson then complains about Mr. Richardson's new obsession, which she finds displeasing, to which the father says there's nothing wrong with wanting to enjoy his free time. The already stressed Max yells at his parents for always arguing and leaves. The next day, Dan and Max hang out at a restaurant. Dan tells Max to invite Alex to a dance party at his school, but Max seems reluctant. Dan texts Alex on Max's behalf and asks her out to the dance. Alex begins to type out but then gives no response. Max later goes to Alex's house to see her. He notices that her heart monitor is glowing red, an indication that her heart has gotten bigger due to feelings. The two end up arguing. Max tells Alex that it was wrong of her not to tell him what was going on with her, but Alex states that there is no quick fix to her problem and she can't live life like a prisoner. Alex then tells Max that she's been put on strong medications that'll prevent her condition from worsening, and she says she wants to go to the dance with Max. Next, we're shown Max, all dressed up for the dance. He goes down the stairs without his bandages, but his parents immediately cover Alex's eyes and send him back in. He apologizes and rushes back inside for the bandages. He returns a moment later after wearing them and approaches Alex. He gives Max a dog mask and a horn as a gift, saying they're for their costumes. The two reach the party and start dancing together. Slow music starts playing soon and the couple start dancing. Max and Alex initially hesitate, but when Max asks Alex for her hand, they start slow dancing closely as well. The proximity makes Alex's heart throb. She excuses herself, saying she's getting sick, and walks away as soon as her nose starts to bleed. After Alex leaves, Dan joins Max with his date called Valencia. Craig also comes towards them and tries to talk to Valencia, but she tells him off, saying she's with Dan now. Craig realizes that Max is under the dog mask and grabs him by the neck. Holding him with his face towards Valencia, Craig pulls off Max's mask. To his horror, Valencia dies after having one look at his face. The police come and arrest Max. After some investigation, they let Max out of prison. Right after they release him from jail, Max visits Alex at the hospital to ask her about her health and her current situation. There, Max comes to know that Alex lied to him. She was never on medication, and every time he made her feel a certain way, her heart grew worse and worse. Alex tells Max that her life expectancy was just 16 years. Due to avoiding feelings of friends, she's been able to live up to 17 years, but she feels empty. Max, she says, was the only milestone in her life, the only person whose company she ever enjoyed. She says she can't get better and expresses her wish to see Max's face, but he straight up refuses, saying it's not easy to watch someone die and that her death will constantly haunt him in the future. He tells her he can't grant her wish and leaves. At his house, Max's mother is worried at home and worried parents are shown talking to the police over the phone, asking where their son is since they hadn't heard back since he's been arrested. A stressed Max enters his house and starts violently hitting his face with a brick to disfigure his lethally attractive face. His parents stop him and calm him down. Max takes off his face wrapping in frustration and sorrow. The cat appears before him and dies on the spot. Next, Max is seen in a bathtub filled with jelly beans. Throughout the day, Max ignores Alex's texts and calls. The next day, Dan goes to bid Valencia goodbye at her memorial. Max joins him there and they both talk about Valencia and Alex. Dan gets cross after learning that Max is ignoring Alex when she's in such a critical condition at the hospital and tells him not to be a dick. Max argues that his problems are bigger, to which Dan explained that his stubbornness will only deprive him of the chance to say goodbye. After a while, Max visits Alex and decorates her wall with self-made crafts. He then apologizes to Alex for not being there for her and lays down next to her. He tells her that it is really hard for him to say goodbye to her. They talk for a while, and then Alex again asks to see Max's face. Max tells Alex to close her eyes. As she does, he unwraps his face and lays next to her. Alex turns towards him and takes off her oxygen mask. She tells Max she's scared, which he says she doesn't have to do this. With her eyes still closed, Alex kisses Max and opens her eyes. However, seeing him does not kill her, and she keeps staring. Suddenly, her monitors start beeping loudly. Max hurriedly wraps his face again and calls for the doctors. Next, Max is seen lying beside Alex's bed as he goes down the memory lane and recalls all the movement of Alex. We're then brought back to the present, where Alex's bed is now empty and the wall no longer holds the crafts made for her. Max leaves the hospital in pain and walks to the church where he stands beside Alex's coffin. Max then goes to the bridge. He puts a jelly bean flyer in an envelope with Alex's name on it and drops it into the river and let it sink. Next, we're shown Max at a doctor's clinic. The doctor asks him how he feels on a scale from 1 to 10, to which he replies he feels like a 5. The doctor tells Max that is wonderful improvement, indicating he'd been much worse before in his healing. The doctor asks him what changed, to which he explained that the case over Valencia finally got settled. Serotonin overdose was declared the cause of death, which seemed natural, so all the cases against both Max and Craig were dropped. The case made Max popular, and sometimes people ask him for his help to put the ones in pain out of their misery. Max still visits Esther, he says. He explains that Alex taught him when someone loves you unconditionally,
What do you mean?
that's what your personality is. Thus, those who love him can't be killed by him. His parents have also gotten closer and worked things out between them. The doctor asks him what's next, to which he says he never wants to live without practice. With this, the movie ends. Thanks for watching, guys.
Those who love him don't die. So that is you like them. Oh, look out to the sky. Oh, what? Just blow inside. Rest inside.
I look great second here. Well, look, if you're scrolling on YouTube, trying to piece together because unlike other social media,
Mamma mia, casa mia! Mamma mia! Is that a PS5? Daddy! It's Daddy!
It was just running along on a wood deck and just scuffed along and huge stunner.
The deck was older wood or
Oh yeah, very weathered.
very weathered. Okay. Yeah, yeah. This was kind of a rental house. Okay. Are you on vacation or? Okay. Where are you from? You're from Mobile. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And then he fell, and then let's see his hand. So.
Oh yeah. So you got just a couple more in the fingers.
So 1, 2. I see 2. Is there any more?
There's little bits.
So a lot of people are going to say, well, just unroof it. And the problem with that is that it creates a much greater, larger wound. It takes a lot longer to heal. We just do a little incision there so we can irrigate it out and then work it out this way. That wound could heal up so much faster. I think I'm feeling it. I want you just to grab onto it and see if you can pull it out. See if that can work that way. So. That's the whole thing. Let's measure. Let's see, because it was in that far. You may have the whole thing. Now what I want to try and do is I want to try and irrigate this. It doesn't have to go away. If you get lodged in there and then you start squirting and the water's coming out the other end, I'm a happy man. I'm happy either way. Your water. Okay.
Look at this dude. So much there.
Alright, so let's get you all
Inside. Those are in the paw. Do you see my Fortnite skin seating?
I'm gonna just keep it at a distance. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. And you tell me, you see anything else?
I'm gonna I said we must finish this tea. Do you think I'm going to die? No. You better hide.
The movie begins with a little girl, Chloe Lewis, looking out the window. She looks at an ice cream truck, and then looks up at the sky and sees some bird flying. Her Henry Lewis rushes to her side and shuts the opening. He tells her to be careful, and that she needs to be good at hiding so the bad guys won't find her. She recites a script she memorized. She asks if the woman in the photo will love her. Henry assures her. He tells her it's why they're paying the woman. Her father cleans his pistols and secures the coverings they placed over the window. He asks her about what she would do if he did come back from the store. Chloe tells him that she would hide in the closet, and when she runs out of food, she'd go across the street and tell the neighbors, Steve and Nancy, that she is Eleanor Reed and feed them. Lies. She's mesmerized if they take care of her. She reads from a children's alphabet picture book as we see the walls of their house. There are marks on the walls to show how many days they've been hiding. After reading about baseball in the book, Father asks her about her favorite sport. She says she's never played a sport. Father tells her to make something up if she doesn't know the answer to stay safe. He tells her she needs to lie to be normal. They play cards. She asks for ice cream after dinner. Her father tells her that they don't have ice cream in the house. She asks him when they'll be going to the store. He tells her that he's been hitting the stores too much, so they need to be careful. She calls his bluff and wins the game. He drinks from his cup and begins bleeding from his right eye. She asks if her mom bleeds from her eyes and if she will one day bleed from her eyes as well. He tells her he hopes her eyes don't bleed. He jokes about him bleeding and she laughs. It's nighttime. Her father brushes her hair as she brushes her mouth. They have a breathing exercise. Henry moves closer to Chloe and yells, "You're not normal." She opens her eyes and laughs. He tells her that it's important she practices the breathing exercise. Chloe laughs and mentions something about a mountain. Henry's shocked that she knows about the mountain since he hasn't told her about a mountain. He asks her if she's gone outside, checked through his junk mail, or spoken to someone. She denies. He pressures her to know how she knows about that mountain, but she doesn't tell him. Her father blocks the mail slot in the door with duct tape and burns all of his junk mail. Chloe can't sleep, so she grabs a Sharpie and draws a woman's face on her pillow. She whispers to the pillow. She hears a sound and
Wow. Thank you, Mama.
You guys must stop wasting this. It's a lot of money. You guys are wasteful.
You and Annabelle and Isabel. You're not even close to YouTube. I was going to test it.